Are there things you don't like about the Monster Hunter games you currently play? If so, stay tuned. I am Reaver Jolt, and this is the top 10 things we don't want in the next Monster Hunter game. Now before we start, I'm basing these unwanted features from Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Both games are great, but they have their issues. We also still don't know a lot about the new game. With that out of the way, let's get to the list. Number 10. Scout Flies. Now this one is subjective, but most people don't have full research on all the monsters in Monster Hunter World. For those who do, they don't have to experience the instant camera spin around that most players experience when having to rely on Scout Flies. Also, Scout Flies don't seem to know where they're going half the time, and you just have to rely on instinct or the minimap to search for monsters. We don't want Scout Flies or any auto camera flipping tracking system in the new game. Either add paintballs and make their duration longer, or add another feature that allows you to track monsters without flipping your screen back and forth. Number 9. Monster-locked weapon trees. Now what I mean is, there are weapon trees you can't get to or craft at all, and you have to upgrade another weapon tree to get to them. Take the Agnavulcan Gunlance for example. If I want it, this is what I have to deal with. I have to craft the Tetsukabra Gunlance first, then get it to level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 before I can upgrade it to the Ignactor tree. All of that requires grinding Tetsukabra a bunch from low to high rank, and then you can get the Flamethrower Gunlance, which you can't craft. It would have been easier to just allow weapon trees like this to be craftable instead of locked behind another weapon tree and grind out the materials before you get it. I really like the upgrade system in MHGU, but instead of making some weapons uncraftable, make them craftable but need more materials and Zenny. Number 8. Uninspired weapon designs. Now this one is obvious at this point and it's been covered by many others in the community, but it just has to be mentioned. In Monster Hunter World, only a fraction of weapons have their own custom designs. I know they probably made it this way for realistic purposes, but come on now. These quote-unquote realistic designs are just lazy in my opinion, and they really could have done better. It's not fair that some weapons get the unique design and the rest don't. They just need to have unique designs for all the weapons, like they did in the previous titles. Number 7. Layered Armor. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate has a feature called Transmog. It allows players to fuse armor pieces so their mixed sets of armor can look however they want. It's a fantastic feature they did for MHGU, but for Monster Hunter World, all we have right now is a thing called Layered Armor. Unlike Transmog, you have to unlock several layered armor sets. Once you equip the set you want, that layered set stays equipped until you unequip it, which means you can't save that layered armor over another set in your loadout. This isn't very good compared to Transmog. For the new Monster Hunter title, they should just keep the Transmog feature from MHGU. I also know there's a Transmog mod for MHGU by the way. Number 6. Inconvenient hubs. We don't want hubs that are as big as Astera or gathering halls that have no necessities like a smithy, farm, or melting pot. In Monster Hunter World, every necessity is too spread out and too far apart. So in the new game, we want smaller hubs and gathering halls that have all the necessities that players need. Number 5. Tempered/Hyper Monsters. Tempered monsters from MHW and Hyper monsters from MHGU are more difficult versions of the normal monsters. They may provide a challenge for some, but they're uninspired and could have been so much more. In the past Monster Hunter games, each time you go up a rank, monsters have new moves, which is better than slapping them with glossy textures or black auras and making them stronger. In the case of MHGU though, some of the hyper monsters are too difficult for some players to take on alone, and most weapons require some hyper monster materials to upgrade, which can be a difficulty wall for most. In MHW's case, tempered monsters aren't that worth hunting because the only rewards worthwhile are decorations. Other than that, they don't give much. Come on now, subspecies, rare species, and even deviants were a better idea than tempered and hyper monsters. For example, Silver Rathalos and Dread King Rathalos are harder than normal Rathalos, and they look unique. Tempered and Hyper Rathalos are harder than normal Rathalos, but are uninspired, harder versions and look no different apart from black aura in certain areas and glossy textures. In the new game, there should just be new and returning subspecies, rare species, or deviants, or some new and creative way to make monsters harder and have a unique look at the same time. Number 4. Lack of single player and a pause button. Monster Hunter World only has multiplayer options. Even though you can play offline with no internet, you can't pause the game. This is frustrating for those who are being called upon while gaming and they can't pause. An even worse scenario is if there is an emergency or if someone is in urgent need of your attention. You end up having to get up and leave your game unattended and get carded as a result. This is only the case for those who play single player. It's obvious Capcom can't do anything about this for multiplayer. They should just make a single player mode with village quests and add a pause feature that you can access quickly if you're playing alone. Number 3. The inability to delete characters. MHGU as well as previous games always had this issue. It's only in Monster Hunter World that it was addressed. It's annoying to have your important file and then have 2 other files you made because you thought you wanted to make them work only to find out you can't delete them individually. And you wind up stuck with them forever until you can either play them or delete your whole save data. In the new game, they should add a way to delete files individually like they did for Monster Hunter World. Number 2. A boring endgame. Monster Hunter World doesn't have a very good endgame. There's not a lot to look forward to after you beat the game. You can upgrade weapons to the max, make mix sets, grind the same monsters, augment your gear, and just use that on monsters you already took on to try and get a better time record. This is probably due to the fact that there's no rank beyond high rank yet. We don't want that kind of endgame in the new title. The new game should have lots to do like in MHGU. Adding more ways to make the endgame worthwhile would give players more to do in the endgame without it feeling like a chore. Number 1. Annoying main characters. That means you, handler. That's right, we as hunters don't want characters that just get in the way of what you're trying to do and aren't at all grateful for you for saving them from the trouble that they intentionally get themselves into. In the past games, you never had anything like the handler. The likes of the Moga Sweetheart, Guildmar, and Hublass that have no real story are better than the handler. The handler doesn't really have a story apart from getting yourself in trouble and taking a majority of the credit for what you, the hunter, did in saving her life, hunting assigned monsters, etc. Let me tell you a little story about the handler. This'll be amusing for anyone watching. Once upon a time, there was an itty-bitty little handler who didn't have a real name just like the rest and who always ate a lot. She would go on quests with the hunter with no weapon whatsoever and do nothing but intentionally get herself in trouble, constantly having no care in the world whether she was in danger. Every time she got in trouble, the hunter would save her again and again.
2 hours later.
And again and again. And at the end of it all, she would just take 50% of the credit and just eat and eat and eat. The end. It's obvious by now that characters like the handler should never be in any future game, especially as main characters that partner with you, the hunter. So Capcom, please do us all a favor and don't add the handler to the next game or any character like her. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and that little story skit of the handler, consider liking and subscribing. Check out the things we do want in the next game if you are curious about that. Anyways, be kind to one another and have a most wonderful day.